There is nothing more, quote, spiritual than transcendence. And there is nothing to transcend other than our own acculturated sense of self or ego. One of the interesting studies coming out of Johns Hopkins University around psilocybin is that the expanded consciousness that comes from mushrooms or psilocybin is not generated by additional blood flowing to new areas in the brain. It's actually coming from reducing blood flow to the area of the brain that has the built-up synaptic connections around the acculturated self, otherwise known as I. The acculturated self is formed primarily by excluding the vast amount of energy and reality that we might identify with and saying, I'm not the stars, I'm not the earth, I'm not my feelings, I'm not these feelings, I'm not these thoughts, I don't believe that, I don't want this, that's not me, you're not me, this isn't me. And what we're left is this very narrow and somewhat artificial sense of this is who I am. I am the one who is not all of these things. And when you deny blood to this area of the brain, we start seeing feelings. We start feeling colors. We start connecting more with the earth. We start seeing the ecological ripple effects where this I is not in opposition with 99.9% of the entire multiverse and the entire planet upon which we're based. Now, to transcend self, or often, to be spiritual, is to move beyond the synaptic area of our own brain that is rigid at blocking communication flow from all the other areas of our brain and all the other areas of our brain and the senses. The, quote, psychedelic effect, where we see rainbows, where we move, where one thing becomes another, synesthesia. This is a part of a sense of self that doesn't fit within the culture, and the systemic training of a culture is itself an ego. We are these people, and we are not these people, and we are not these people, and we are not this planet, and we are not this, and we are not one of those woo-woo people. We are, scientific except when it's unscientific to look at our bigotry or our chauvinism, etc., which is not scientific. We are these things, and we are not these things, which is what allows the illusion of the intelligence of war or deliberately harming other parts of the planet or ourselves to seem intelligent. There is only one part that seems intelligent to. That is the ego of a culture that pretends it is not part of the rest of the planet, so we can napalm Vietnam and burn women and children alive, and somehow that's not connected to us because we're Americans and they're Vietnamese. This cultural identity is not built based on science or logic. It is built on an exclusionary mechanism of defining a small sense of self by disowning the larger self. And it's important to recognize that the ego, by definition, is the smallest unit of humanity in the universe. The ego seeks to define itself as this body and as being disconnected from every single body of its species in the entire universe. I'm not that, I'm not this, I'm not this, I'm not this. The ego is what remains when we have eliminated 99.9% of the ecological relationship of what we are. And we say, this is me, which is what's left. Now, all you need to have expanded consciousness is to stop blood flow from that elimination protocol. The elimination protocol that says, this isn't me. Because when you take blood away from that learned thought pattern, that learned habit of thinking, feeling, and doing, suddenly you realize, this is me. This is me. And this is me. And these emotions have colors. And these colors have feelings. And these feelings have thoughts. And these sensations have colors. And these colors move out into the tree. And these thoughts move down into the ground. And I feel this energy, and I see the way that I am part of an ecology that is bigger than myself. The ego area in the brain is the smallest area in the brain. If you want to experience the largest area of the brain, facilitate it by inducing the endogenous DMT through transcendental meditation, through chanting, through dancing, that accesses a Schedule I banned drug. Cultures that are afraid of being part of something bigger persecute, penalize, and illegalize the substances that induce transcendental states. And individuals who are terrified of the parts of themselves that are bigger than their narrow definitions are addicted to a level of control that precludes all transcendent experiences. Now, a transcendent experience is not separate from who we are. It is not separate from a culture. A transcendent experience dissolves the illusionary artifice of the ego and the culture by restoring the innate connectivity between this small, isolated, partitioned area of self that is in fear with the rest of the ecology upon which it depends. This body dies in 3 minutes if I do not breathe in the interdependent flow of energy from my environment. This body dies in a matter of days if I don't consume energy in my environment. This environment dies if I do not give back the fertilizer. This environment dies if I harm it with imbalances and toxins. And then I die. When I kill my planet, when I kill my larger body, then I die too. And when I kill a small piece of it, a small part of me dies. But within the illusion of the ego shell, this is not seen. This is not known. Within the illusion of the culture, what happens to sweat laborers in India for my Gucci handbag does not matter, because I'm not them. The ego and the culture is not defined by who we are. It is what is left after we cut out 99.999% of all of existence and say, I'm none of that. I'm just what's left. And all you have to do to have expanded consciousness is to head towards the unknown. What is known is less than a percentage of what is unknown. You want to head towards transcendence, head to what is unknown. Talk about what you don't know. What is unconscious is 99% bigger than what is conscious. By definition, because what is conscious is what's left when all of the taboos, when all of the programming says, oh, we don't believe in past lives. Okay, so they're no longer conscious. We don't believe in hate. Okay, it's there, it shows up in these phenomena, but we just push it away. Now, when we push that away, we also hide these other things that are linked to it. We don't believe in resonance. So anything that's about resonant birth gets pushed away, and the causality is emphasized. So what we know, by definition, is the smallest part of what there is to know. It is what's left after we have excluded 99% of reality. So transcendence is not other. Transcendence is not separate. The transcendent experience restores the conscious link by dissolving the illusionary boundary between me and other people, between me and the planet, between the planet and every other moving object in the solar system, between our solar system and everyone else in the universe. When we have a transcendent experience, all that happens is that our sense of consciousness is no longer routed through the smallest area of the culturated brain, of the brainwashed brain, into what is familiar, known, very boring, very painful, and incredibly separate by definition. To heal that, to heal the pain of separation, which is the biggest wound, we must transcend the smallest part of who we are and embrace that part with the bigger and bigger and bigger parts of who we are. In the scientific knowledge that there are no disconnected systems, that you cannot find a single bit of matter anywhere in the universe that is completely isolated from any other matter in the universe, that you cannot find a single unit of energy in the multiverse that does not have a relationship to every other unit of energy in the universe, that there is not a single individual that does not have a relationship with its planet and through its planet to every other planet, that there is not a single individual that does not have a relationship with other human beings, every other human being on the planet. And when we start to understand, that we are the circle that hosts the many guests at the table, the many unique particles, that we are the wave, that we are the ambiance that hosts the many guests at the party, the many guests at the dinner table. When we understand that, we understand that the circle collapses, the circle loses, the circle has something missing when we exclude a single part. When we understand that, we start understanding that our culture, is what's standing in the way of us participating in a dance that is much bigger than the dance that we are able to comprehend within the illusionary consciousness that says, I have nothing to do with 99% of all that exists. When we understand that, transcending the illusionary boundaries and limits of the ego becomes the most sacred work, because at the core of every human being and every consciousness, well-being, vitality, connectedness, relationship, belonging, survival, security, belonging. All of these human needs in Abraham Maslow's hierarchy, self-esteem, are elevated when we move in this direction. So how do we point towards transcendence? We look to what we do not know. We assume that we do not know most of what we need to know in order to dance with most of the dance partners in a dance that we don't yet understand. We assume this. We assume that the states of consciousness that are most isolated, meaning they don't own and connect with others, that are most isolated, are the most unhealthy. Not because they are isolated or disconnected, but an individual that thinks I have no connection to anyone is revealing a condition in which they are 100% captured within the framework of a chauvinistic, very narrow-minded ego. Meaning all their consciousness is going to that area of the brain, which is the man-made, the culturated area of the brain. And when we see someone who says, well, I'm connected to you, but not to you, I'm connected to half of the planet, but not to these other people, we see someone who is 50% healthy. So we move towards what is not owned. In the reality, in the hypothesis that is scientific, that there is not a single anything that can be named that has no link to anything else that can be named, be that energy, be that emotion, be this. And if we understand that, for example, how does my feeling of joy relate to Jupiter? Well, if you understand that it is connected, and that it is the illusionary partitions in consciousness that blocks that connection, we can start answering the question. Well, my feelings connect to my thoughts. My thoughts determine, along with my feelings, my actions. My actions determine how healthy my relationship with this planet is. My relationship with this planet determines how much CO2, how much this, how much that I spend. The health of this planet is connected in a variety of ways. Certainly in the extreme, we could blow up the planet, and it has a gravitational effect. Well, gravity ties into this. You can follow the thread, and you can understand the level of health as the level of partnering connectivity with reality. So if this is a more and more adversarial, where it's me against the entire universe. So what I want to focus on now is what destroys this. How is it that I can be in this state right now, and then an hour from now I can feel 3 years old in terror of the entire universe, frightened, everyone's my enemy, I can't talk about this, I'm the enemy of this person, and if I'm the enemy I'll get killed or I'll get punished or this, that. How do we collapse from this natural state into the paranoid, delusional state of the ego? And it is induced by other human beings in early childhood trauma. Because when you say that's too much as a 2-year-old and you get shaken at 300% more and you realize this person is not attuned to you. The people around you do not own you as a part of them. They're not feeling you. They're not thinking you. They're not even in the world where your childhood is connected with your adulthood, where your childhood is determining the future of this planet. They're not in that reality. They are in their ego's reality, where this is just childhood, where maybe these children don't even have any rights or any thoughts. And if they do, they should like what I want them to do rather than me attuning to who they are. And they're getting thousands upon thousands of messages that we don't see you, you don't belong, we don't want you, we don't want to attune to you. And your life is in danger because of that. Now, if you get this message from sociopathic, meaning the ego is the most sociopathic, it is the dissociated part. A sociopath is a human being who has lost their emotional, mental, physical, visceral connection with the people they are harming. They are in a state of separation that has been induced, not by their birth, but has been induced by the behavior of human beings as they were growing up. A behavior that told that human being, you are not safe here. You are not welcome here. You must disconnect from your sense that you're connected to them, because when you open to honor the connection, they use, they take, they betray, and they endanger your life. Now, nature has this reptilian brain as well. We have the endogenous DMT realms. We have the reptilian brain, the 200 million year old crocodile that survived by fight, flight, freeze in a sociopathic state. So we go back there. Birth does not create human beings in a sociopathic state. Other human beings in a sociopathic state who are not in tune and attuned to the child, who give that child hundreds and hundreds of thousands of messages that their deepest needs, emotions, experiences, curiosities, vulnerabilities are not seen, are not attuned to, and if they are, they don't matter. This regresses a human being to a reptilian PTSD state. Fight, flight, freeze. I'm in a room of reptiles, and I've got to figure out, when I had to tell my mother in my rapid calculations as I'm about to die, because she wouldn't stop. It was funny. When I had to figure out, okay, my life doesn't matter. But her self-image, the image of her ego, that matters to her. Okay, so my feelings, my words, my life doesn't matter. Her image of her ego, that's what matters. Okay, so how can I interrupt this pattern? I've never called my mother a bitch. I'm 7 years old. I'm 8 years old. I'm sure that would protect my life. Not because she cares about me, but because she would be so outraged. The only thing she knows is this identification of who she is and her self-importance and da-da-da-da-da. So if I call her a bitch, she will stop this behavior immediately to address the wound to her ego's image. And that will save my life. Okay, bitch. And she stops. And I can jump off. My life is saved. When you learn that you stay alive by manipulation of other people's ego, because that's the only thing they honor. That's the only thing they relate to. It's a very, 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 very stepped-down, lonely version of consciousness. And it's the version of consciousness many of us, if not most of us, grow up in. As soon as we understand that 99% of what we need to know, we don't know. As soon as we understand that 99% of who we are is disowned. And as soon as we understand that our culture, and then as a step-down version of our culture, our ego, is what arrogantly stands in the way as this small pinnacle of everything that is left after we've excluded 99.9% of all consciousness and reality, because that's how we get the illusion of time. We just zoom in and zoom in and zoom in. You see, and all this is happening at the screen at the same moment. But if all this is happening at the same moment, we just zoom in enough and zoom in enough and zoom in enough, Now you can see this, and now you can see this, now you can see this. And so it's happening all at the same moment, but we create this illusion of time. By zooming in and excluding, we create the illusion of sequencing. In a movie, you get the CD, it's all there. And we say, I'm going to watch this frame, and then this frame, and then this frame, and see, there's this, this happened, and then this happened. And then this happened because this happened. I mean, how do you get that on a CD? It was all there at the beginning. How can you not say that if the beginning of the CD wasn't there, there'd be no place to hold the CD, so the future created the past. It falls apart. I don't like any of this. Why? Because it's unknown. Well, what's the problem with that? The last time I was helpless, the last time I was vulnerable, the last time I didn't know what was going on, my life was in danger. When was that? When I was 5 years old, when I was 2 years old, when I was 8 years old. When I rushed in and I knew that I was going to die, and the teacher said, oh, that's just, I don't have time for this right now. I'm writing about this little 1% that we know, and that's way more important than your trauma or this, that, and the other. You realize, I don't have any allies. There's no one I can turn. If I turn to these people, they'll tease me. If I turn to the teacher, they'll hit me. If I turn to this, I have nowhere to go. I'm all alone. I guess I really have got to button down and figure out this ego thing. I am, I don't belong to them. They don't belong to me. The planet is nothing. I've got to survive. This is how we get sick. But it is not natural. It's how we get sick in a sick culture that disowns the connection between these childhood experiences and an adult lifetime in which they are amplified in millions of interactions and ripple out in the creation of our relationship with the planet and one another. There are so many ways to transcend. We transcend what we are not by becoming conscious of how it's a part of us. We transcend our lack of responsibility by choosing to respond to what is outside of what we're currently defining as our responsibility. Oh, that's not my child. Yes, they're being traumatized. Yes, trauma relates to sociopathic behavior. Yes, sociopathic behavior is probably why my daughter was raped. Yes, I'm spending $150,000 to get my daughter out of rehab because she was started harming because she was raped. And yes, that's a lot of money so as to maintain the illusion that that's not my child. No, that's not my responsibility, that he'll rape somebody else's daughter. You transcend the lack of responsibility based on the illusion that that's not mine, that's not my house, that's not my things, that's not my things. You start understanding and being able to assess how sick a culture is by exactly how much it doesn't own. A racist culture is, of course, sicker than a culture that embraces all races. They're all connected. You ask someone who understands sociology or someone who understands cultural evolution, and you discover that this race came from this race, and this race from this race. So if it's all in an interlinked puzzle, how exactly do you delete your ancestry and say, I'm better than the people that gave birth to me? If my parents die, I don't exist either, but let's just ignore that fact. Let's kill the parents. How do we do this? We do it with myopia. We do it with these false partitions. When we understand the connectivity, we still have this ego that says this is me, and we still have a world where if money is in this bank account with this digit, it supposedly has nothing to do with these other digits, despite the obvious connection that this person paid money to this person made money to this person marked it up 1,000%, this person marked it up 1,000%, and this person gave it into this bank account. It's connected. No. This is mine and not yours. It's, this is mine. So this is to the degree that we can only relate as a paranoid individual in relationship with the entire universe is to the degree that we are living 100% in our ego. To the degree that we live in 100% in our ego is like we're dealing with the smallest level of vision. Because if you zoom in and zoom in and zoom in and zoom in and zoom in, and then suddenly all you have in focus is one eye, and you say, that's me, and everything else doesn't exist, or it's not me. Well, that works fine up to a point. But what happens when you cut out the nose that supposedly isn't you? Does blood get into that eye? What happens when you chop off this neck that isn't you? Does the eye last very long? It's good to have a very, very narrow beam focus to do detail work. But you would be an absolute fool if you wanted to create an art portrait of reality. To try and paint the totality of existence while only focusing on one eye of one person on one planet in the entire universe. You don't have scope, you don't have vision. Vision comes from looking at the waves of the planet, at the waves of one planet and another. The more you step back, the more you have a sense of vision. Well, then it just becomes a question, do you want to see? And do you want to make informed choices based on that vision, or do you want to make choices based on one particle of one moment of time that's supposedly disconnected just because I'm too blind to see everything else because I've put blinders around it in this I'm not, and this is all that's left. So we step outside of that box. When we say spirituality, what we're really talking about are the resonances we start to feel in the synesthetic experience of synergy and ecology. The synesthetic experiences of synergy and ecology as we stop our myopic focus on one note, on one instrument at one moment in time. I make sound, I make sound, I make sound, and realize the symphony of what we are a part of. A symphony. It's more beautiful. Consciousness expands. The illusion of the separated paranoid ego dissolves. Now, cultures, as we found in, how does Richard Nixon, a very paranoid individual, find Timothy Leary the most dangerous man in America? It's easy. Timothy Leary is the little ego who's telling people to have experiences that expand their awareness, that they don't just have to do what they're told. If they're told to go murder someone in Vietnam for this reason, because they're not like us, and we can't have people like that existing on the planet, so we're just going to defoliate our planet. We're going to cause more CO2 emissions with napalm than your Prius is ever going to take away. But that's over there, right? That's over there. We don't have to talk about it. We don't have to look. So the most dangerous person in a paranoid ego is the person who dissolves the illusion of the ego and brings back awareness that there are other ways of seeing things. This isn't the only way of seeing things. That there are the other ways of feeling. This isn't the only way of feeling. That there are other ways to build a culture. There have been 10,000 human cultures in human history, all of them with pros and cons. And it's profoundly arrogant to assume that ours is the absolute best just because we have successfully blocked every awareness of the strengths of every other culture in human history. See, this is how we create a culture. I'm this and I'm not that, by just saying, oh, they're barbarians. The Native American people have managed to have successful cohabitation for thousands of years with their planet and have a sacred relationship, but we couldn't possibly learn anything from them. Let's kill them all. They're not us. That's all we know. Their skin, they have weird feathers. That's not what do we have skin and weird feathers? No, we don't. So let's kill them. They're not us. 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 And then we're what's left. We are the mediocrity. After the decimation, how do you get agriculture? Well, you kill 99.9% of the species. And then what of the worms that start to eat? No, we kill them too with herbicides. And then all that's left in a monoculture is one plant, row upon row. And the ego says, you see, we have won. We have exterminated 99.9% of everything that was here. And only this that I said, that's what's here. And then, of course, when land problems and erosion and pollution in the water and children start developing mental illnesses and all this, like, well, that's not me. I am doing this, and this is good because I said so. And no, I don't have to look at history and none of that. No, I don't have to do any of that. Anyone who says anything different, it's simple. They're wrong, you see? And so we look for control. We look for control of information. We look for bias. We look for bigotry. We look for racism. We look for chauvinism. We look for who has the least rights. And that's the sick area, created by the ego's blind spot. It's remarkable that there are still people that beat and traumatize their children and pretend it has no impact. They have to preclude so much data to maintain that delusion. So they do. Attacking, shaming, humiliating, minimizing, destroying the ecology of our future to maintain the safety that I know everything, and so if it's outside my little world of knowledge, I don't want to know about it. This is the pivot point. The cause, trauma, beginning in childhood. The directions towards the unknown, towards inclusion, towards communication, towards flow. The other directions, that's not me, that's not me, this not me, that's not me, that's not right, I'm right, you're not. Either or thinking, no room for paradox. This is a clue. And this is not the only way to see things. But we're moving closer to an awareness of ecological consciousness, facilitated by the calming down of the allergic response of the partitioned self to exclude everything else from awareness.